All right.
Okay. Uh, Hello, everyone. My name's Mark. I have a YouTube channel called Several Books, and on Several Books, typically what I try to do is provide kind of author overviews, and what I'll try to do is to rank or grade um, books, typically novels, but also some theory and things similar to that. I have my friend here, Tyler. And we're recording this conversation because of Tyler's idea. And basically, he thought it would be an interesting conversation to kind of discuss religion. So, what I'm going to do is hand this off to Tyler and let him kind of introduce himself, provide a background of who he is. I'll say a few things about me, and then we'll dive into this conversation. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Uh, yeah, this podcast was my idea to trick my friends into talking to me and recording our conversations for posterity. Maybe one day our offspring would be interested in hearing us ramble about topics, but at least personally, I I want to refer back to the things that we talk about all the time on our group texts, on our phone calls, and it seems like it's impossible to do so. So I appreciate you showing up for this, Mark, and I hope it goes well. Yeah, Mark and I have known each other since third grade or something in elementary school, and um, we've been in and out of talking with each other, but in the last couple years we've really started hitting it off. And around the winter of 2024 to 2025, I believe, we used to have like weekly conversations. And I remember one night I brought it up to you that I was kind of going through some things personally. And I remember I mentioned the Bible. And then you actually very kindly went into your own thoughts and you were supportive of it. And I didn't know what your beliefs were and, religiously at all. And I certainly didn't have any of my own. And I'll get into that maybe in a little bit. But Mark was the one that provided kind of that first impetus, the spark to get me to actually pursue this idea that I had to read the whole Bible at some point and not just dismiss it, try to take it somewhat seriously. Um, and it was a very fortuitous, I guess, meeting of the minds. And right around that time, I was thinking about having another child. And when people have children, that can change their religious beliefs and so forth. And I certainly was starting to feel something inside of me change. Um, and I guess I should say I used to be a new atheist. I guess I didn't know what that term meant until a year ago. But apparently, the Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, Michael Shermer, those guys were the new atheists around the mid 2000s, right? I used to,
2005, probably.
yeah. And I used to listen to their videos all the time. When YouTube basically came about, those were the first clips that I watched. And I was part of this thing called the Skeptic Society, which is, I think it's still a thing. It's created by Michael Shermer. And I really looked up to these people. And I'm not saying I don't anymore, but I also find that some of their ideas I don't agree with anymore, or at least we can
They've
get into
alienated
that.
you.
Right, right.
Mhm.
So that's a little bit of a background of an overview of why I'm doing this, and yeah, back to you,
Sure.
Mark. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I remember when Tyler got into Richard Dawkins, and it was around 2005. And I got a copy of The God Delusion, but honestly, I never read the whole book. I read about the first 50 pages and kind of lost interest. Um, at the same time, I did get into an atheist philosopher. I got very interested in Sartre when I was about 18,
Mm.
19. And so we have some similarities in viewpoints, but my religious sense of self at that time was very shaped by Sartre. Now, in college, I studied classics for a concentration, and we did do some Bible reading in that, but I've never read the entire Bible. I've gone through different periods of time in my life when I've been more and less spiritual. I think that's somewhat normal. I don't typically like the word atheist, especially with the cultural connotations it has now. But basically, um, since the new atheist wave, I generally referred to myself as a pantheist at that time. My experience with religion more recently is typically rooted around French intellectuals from the middle of the century. So I'm very interested in Simone Weil, Georges Bataille, um, basically mystics like that. And I do have some experience with tarot. I've mentioned that in my channel before, but not extensively. But I've read several books on tarot, and for fun, I've used to give tarot readings for friends sometimes. It's just kind of amusing. It's been a great practice for French language learning. If you're somebody who became interested in my video because of French, learning a skill like tarot that you can practice with a friend is a great way to work on your language. But let's go back to Tyler or open this up again, and we'll see where we're going.
Yeah, I remember you on the tarot aspect. You actually did a reading for me uh, during that winter,
Mhm.
and I think I forget exactly what the fortune was, but it actually turned out to be true. So I kind of can't remember the specifics, but it was actually I think it was about a transformation,
Okay.
essentially spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
Um, so that was actually interesting. I should mention uh, my from childhood. I used to go. I basically was christened in a Greek Orthodox church, although I didn't know that until I was in my 20s. Apparently, I was secretly baptized by my grandfather without telling my parents. He basically whisked me away and took me to the church, and I was apparently kind of sick at the time, so that's why he did it. Uh, so that was a little bit of a shock. I didn't think I had any relationship with Christianity from going to church on Christmas and Easter, uh, basically to hear the carols. And I can't keep up with you, Mark, on French philosophy or anything, but it is fascinating to me. I actually really enjoy hearing about it.
Sure.
But I guess I come from this as more of like a here's my life. I guess I was, at some point I knew a little bit about what church meant, and then I fell completely out of it. And then yeah, I
Do
had a
you
family.
feel that reading the Bible all the way through has made you more spiritual or less spiritual?
Okay, so good question. I should say that I am about 2/3 done with the
Okay.
Bible, and that's just because I like to read different versions. I have software. I take notes. I use a study Bible, and I'd like to take my time. Right. So, like, you were the one that said you don't just read the Bible from page one to the end,
Yeah,
right?
it's there's too much different stuff going on. You want to take your time and move around a little bit.
Yeah. And so that was actually really illuminating because I think I probably would have done that and would have hated it. So I've been going back and forth with the help of ChatGPT on finding a good reading plan. But I should say I've read the whole New Testament. I've read the Torah, and I'm getting through the middle of the prophets section, which is like the
Sure.
the middle of the Old Testament. And I've read some of the nicer, Song of Songs and Psalms and all that.
Yeah.
But I'm still working on it. But I was I would say that there are certain books of the Bible that I really felt a connection to, and there's other ones that I just find it to be essentially like hogwash. I don't care.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
it's
another
difficult.
reason why it's good to jump around. If anybody hasn't read the Bible and is interested, don't just start at page one at Genesis and go to the end. Take the time to look that up. You can try. Tyler, you said you use ChatGPT, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Um,
It was
hmm.
very helpful. If you just anyway, I'm not plugging AI or
No,
chat,
no,
but
it's
it
fine.
was because it kind of forms a profile of who you are and maybe what you're interested in. But Mark, I think you were the one that told me to start out with Ecclesiastes
Oh
and
yeah,
like
no,
Song of
I my
Solomon.
favorite
Yeah.
book is probably Jonah.
Okay.
It reads almost like a short story. Of course, it has more of a historical tone.
Mm.
But yeah, the book that I was recommended to read first was Ecclesiastes when we started reading the Bible. Basically because I was bouncing off of it. I was reading it and just not caring and not interested in it. And at that time, I was much more interested in Sartre. And then, yeah, so Ecclesiastes was recommended to me. I figured it would be a good recommendation for you. Also,
Yeah.
Song of Songs was interesting. It's kind of considered the only biblical erotica, and so it's a different thing to kind of bring up and be like, oh no, you should definitely check out Song of Songs. Also, I think it's beautiful, but it's definitely not like many of the other books.
Yes, definitely not. I remember thinking, wow, this is actually in the Bible. This is going to be cool. If the whole thing is kind of like this, then man, I could get used to it. It's kind but that's, I think, one of the most striking things about it is that it is really just a collection of different texts written hundreds, if not thousands, of years apart from each other, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so I think starting out with Ecclesiastes, which basically ecclesiastical means just related to the church, but it's all about just why are we here?
Mhm.
Why do we toil under the sun? What's the point of it all? Everything is vanity. I thought it was kind of almost amusing to
Mhm.
read that in a Bible, right? And
Right.
so, no, I thought that was good. And Song of Songs, I think, is beautiful as well. I don't see any problem with it.
Right.
Um, I would say that recently, since I just finished the New Testament and like really going over it, um, part of the reason why I suggested this topic was because my father sent me, and apparently he sends me articles every now and then from the New Yorker or whatever, these liberal intellectual things that he subscribes to as
Right.
a professor. But he gave me this one about Paul or Saint Paul, however you want
Mhm.
to call him. I'm not Catholic, so I'll just say Paul. But I thought that this would be a interesting article. It's called Saint Paul Remade Human History. How did he do it? It's by Adam Gopnik. It was written April 13th, 2026. I sent that
Sure.
to you guys. Uh, I thought maybe we could maybe pivot to talking a little bit about like what the article's point was and why do we even care? Why are we talking about Paul? Um, I can give my thoughts on it from a perspective of I
Rather
just happen to
than
be reading the
like
Bible.
read the article, do you just want to give kind of a
On that,
rundown
yeah,
of what's in it?
sure, yeah, and that so basically, I did not. So I'm a novice, completely new when it comes to this stuff. So
You're fine. I'm sure you have at this point more experience than a lot of people.
well, perhaps, but when you go out and see these scholars talk about these, they spend their whole lives talking theology. It's amazing. Like,
There's a YouTuber I like. I started watching named Dan McClellan, who does an academic biblical study basically, and it responds to various Christians. He's been to Israel, and I think he has a PhD or two PhDs, and he's publishing in
mm,
an academic. Neither one of us has to be that guy. I mean,
yeah, I,
I'm in IT. You're something different,
uh,
but uh,
yeah, no, that's why I feel a little bit sheepish talking about this as if like I have anything to add to the wider discourse, but I still do think that
mhm.
you know not everybody knows. I mean, most Christians, let's face it, they haven't really read the Bible too much outside of passages in church or the most famous ones that everybody knows. And
I mean, one thing I noticed, talking to I don't wanna say you don't wanna make a stereotype like this. A lot of people who are religious have, a pretty deep understanding of what they believe and everything. But I have
yeah,
definitely met, many Christians who, seem to confuse, preaching with what's actually in the Bible. And I remember talking to somebody when I was in school who used to always tell stories about. They seemed like they were rooted in the Gospels, but his descriptions of events and things that he would say were in the Bible never appeared.
Mm,
So it seemed to me what he was really doing was confusing kind of the theatrics of a ceremony and the
yeah,
stories that are kind of uh, explained that way with what's actually in the Bible.
right. And I shouldn't. Again, you make a good point. Like, I'm not trying to be judgmental, or
Hmm.
I will say, I admittedly back when I was a new atheist, I really just found anybody that talked about their faith to be suspect. I didn't care for that at all. I didn't even know why people prayed. I thought it was all silly, but like, I think I've grown up a bit, right? As we all do,
Hmm.
and transformed. And I've tried to have an open mind towards people who legitimately find faith and religion, and not just Christianity, any type of religion, to be a comfort in their lives. And that's actually endearing. I guess my main issue is that organized religion can can impose their beliefs, right? And they can
Yeah,
get in the
absolutely.
political sphere, right? It's
I mean, um, there's like a Lockean dream, like John Locke,
mm,
that basically what it is that the government would handle more, let's say like business type law issues, and the church would be a morality police. And
mm,
I think as an overview, sometimes people like to imagine that. But when you think of the church as a morality police, you have to think in U.S. history, um, the church used to have the authority for death penalty, and I don't think many people would want that at the time or right now. But I forget. I've just forgotten why I was bringing that up. What did you just say?
It's okay. No, I think we were talking about I
Oh, political. The
political
reason,
influ
yes, when it
yeah.
gets political, I'm somebody who tends to think that like organized religion is inherently political,
Mm.
because you're organizing people. So you're managing people, and in that sense, it's partially political. But
Yeah. I I don't want to I don't want to necessarily derail into that for this conversation, but I think it's still important to just kind of bring up, like, yeah, there's I still have my qualms with
sure.
organized religion, but the actual getting into the details of why people believe, or basically how Christianity developed. I mean, it's almost like the history of Western civilization almost is rooted, right? From
Right.
the Roman times onwards. Um, I just I never took European history because I
Hmm.
had to take jazz band in high school. So and they literally said, no, there's no possible way to learn about that. And so I basically have this wide gap in knowledge from basically 0 AD through 500 or
1500 or
1000,
something.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, up through the Enlightenment and Renaissance. So I realized that using the Bible and religion as a conduit might be the best way to start that journey. Which,
Hmm.
you asked me if I became more spiritual, and I guess yes, I guess is the answer. But and I'm not really a spiritual person. I have people around me very close to me who are much more superstitious, and their culture just is basically, it incorporates superstition, and it's
Hmm.
very fascinating to me, but I never really prescribed to it. But reading the Bible has opened me up to, not superstitions necessarily, but I would say I started to pray last year. um, as I mentioned, I we were trying to have our second child, and we had complications. And I kind of took, I guess, Pascal's wager here. It's like, well,
Hmm.
this isn't going to hurt me. What's the worst that could happen if I said a mantra every night before I go to bed, basically.
It was
Um,
soothing.
yeah, and the Lord's Prayer is that mantra, and it's just one of those things that, yeah, it would help me go to sleep. And if
Hmm.
there was any type of help out there that would hear from me, well, I guess it's not going to hurt. So that would be my answer to the question that you asked 15 minutes ago.
No, it's
But
fine.
um, and so anyway, I guess going into the article, which I know that the viewers of this have not read, and I'm not necessarily trying to plug this as a go out and do your homework type of thing. Um,
Mhm.
but some of the things that the article is talking, it's like a literature review.
Right.
Um, yeah, several authors talk about it, and maybe you probably haven't heard of them or whatever, but these authors all talk about Paul to this day. And I didn't realize, as a complete novice to this, that Paul wrote half the New Testament. I mean, basically, aside from the Gospels and some of the stuff at the end,
Mhm.
the Pauline epistles are like the foundation of Christianity.
I've heard people say that Christianity should be called Paulism.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly. I had no idea that, but I actually kind of agree with that. And
Right.
it's controversial because, um, again, I'm learning about this, but Paul, he was Jewish, right? And he initially persecuted Christians. Um, and then he became blind, right? And then he got saved and then realized the gospel and then made it his mission, right? And he spread it
Mhm.
around and formed the first churches. So, I mean, he obviously played an important role. I just did not realize nearly how much he really did. And that's why it's interesting to this day. People are still interested in who this guy actually was.
Right.
Um, and I'll say, I mentioned I came from my mother was Greek. So Paul and a lot of the stories in the Bible, I say stories, whatever. Not, I don't mean to disparage it, but a lot of them are very similar to some of the Greek or the Hellenistic stories of the time, right?
Right.
There's tons of similarities there. And one of the things that I learned that I don't know how many people know this is, but there were the pagans or the non-Jewish Christians in Greek, or the Hellenistic ones, and there were also the Jewish Christians at the time. And Paul was very, very concerned with both groups, trying to get the people who really had no faith on board, but then also convince the Jews at the time that maybe this is the better way to go. And that was something kind of surprising that actually has a lot to do with why Christianity is the way it is today. I mean, it's as a Greek myself, I thought that was cool because I had no idea that Greeks had much to do with
Oh, sure.
early Christianity.
Sure.
My naivete.
I think they're actually mentioned in the Bible. The ancient Greek kind of civilization is directly mentioned as
Yeah.
like if people had not uh, heard of Jesus, this is the closest thing we have to a uh, uh, a
like
holy
like a
or
Messiah or like a or
positive city state, something like
I see,
that.
yes.
Yeah. So I do feel like I remember something like that from when I read the Bible in college.
Yeah,
But
there's a lot of ancient civilizations, and it's but they're not referred to the same way maybe as we refer to them today.
mhm,
And that's what I've learned. That's why you need a study Bible, and you also need to, if you really want to understand what it's saying, right, you need to go out and read other sources and compile it. So the Bible itself is almost like um, it's a biased document. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Paul wrote these specifically for a certain audience, and I guess the context is super important.
Yeah.
I wish they taught that more, like, or maybe when you went to church, they would talk about that a bit more. I think that maybe modern day Christians, and I'm not saying, again, I'm not trying to cast an umbrella over everybody, but I think honestly, a lot of Christians would get more out of Christianity if they learned some of the history behind why these books are written the way they were.
Sure.
Um, so that, again, I'm not trying to be uh, not trying to go on a soapbox here. This is just my own personal theology, and
Hmm.
I thought the article brought up some interesting points, such as why did Paul never talk about Jesus? I mean, it's if you from reading the epistles recently, I don't recall him really talking about Jesus too much in particular. It was much more about laws and customs of the early church,
Hmm.
how you should live, faith through love, and I guess the idea that Paul argued that faith by belief alone is enough for salvation. And
Sure.
that actually apparently heavily influenced Martin Luther, um, and his Reformation, of course, which is why we have Protestantism. Um, but there's kind of a schism in the church. There's the James side of things, who believe that you really need to go out and perform actions uh, to show your faith. I would say maybe modern day evangelicals kind of fit that
Hmm.
mold a lot more. Um, and we know in the current political sphere, evangelicals have. I think they're the only group of Christians that are growing right now, or at least the it's kind of spread amongst Christianity, and the old school Protestantism is going downhill. Um, so I'm trying to understand why that is.
Sure. I mean, I don't have anything more modern. One thing I want to mention is I had recommended Tyler read the book The Adversary by Emmanuel Carrere a little while ago, and I sent it to him. Um, he has a book called The Kingdom or the Royaume, and it's all about the early church, going out talking to different people and so on. And it's mixed with a memoir of Carrere when he was interested in Christianity and a practicing Christian. So I don't know if you'd be interested in that, Tyler, but I just want to throw it out there as a mention for a piece of culture. Like it very much
I
directly
like the
discusses
author.
that early church.
No, I really like Emmanuel Carrere, the
Hmm.
book that you sent me, at least. I take a long time to read. That's my
Right.
problem. So
Oh no, it's fine.
it's just the way it is. I don't know if it's just my attention
Sure.
issues, but Mark is like a machine. Um, I mean, if your channel is literally all about reading and
Yeah.
synthesizing
Oh yeah.
books, so
Yeah.
it's like a superpower. Um, but no, that's why it's interesting to talk to you about these topics.
Yeah, I mean, uh, I certainly I don't know if everybody's faith journey is different and how much struggle is involved. Um, I know some people seem to have been born in the church and they just take to it.
Yeah.
I've had a few different periods in my life. I went to a private middle school that was Christian, and when I was in college and going through the Bible with classics, and I've always kind of struggled reading it with the appropriate way to critique, and if it's possible to critique based on faith alone. Like I'm reading this document, I don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead. That's
Mm.
just reading the text. I understand it's written in the text. I understand there's traditions in history and so on. But hearing that, it's like, no, I don't believe that. Um, what was I going to say?
Well, your
Yeah,
own
I just
upbringing,
yeah,
your
my own
own,
upbringing. So it's caused me difficulty in education.
mm,
When I was in middle school, having reservations, and then later in college. But it's not till I've been older than 20 that I've kind of come to respect religious involvement. I've had things that have made me wanted to seek out some kind of spiritual connection. And I've looked in the Bible, and Christianity didn't really do it for me.
mm.
I read some of the Quran in college when I was studying Arabic lit, but that's not really me either. I've read a few other old holy texts. Um, do you have experience with other holy texts, Tyler?
Uh, a little bit. So, my wife is Muslim. I should point that out, and I, I have the Quran behind me, actually, right next to the Bible.
Hmm.
Um, I've attempted to read some of it, but if you talk with her, which I have about this, it's the Quran is arguably more it's more difficult to get through
Hmm.
because it's not so story driven
It's much
and easy to
shorter.
read. it's
I
shorter.
yeah, it
Yeah,
reads more like prose
it's like
poetry.
a conversation almost between,
Hmm.
yeah, like prophets and prophecy and rules of living, but there aren't as many of those tales that like get you into it.
Yeah, they
And
tend to be shorter too. Everything about the book is for the most part shorter.
yeah.
I think my copy is 400 pages. I've read a little more than half of it.
Mm.
Um,
What'd you
but
think?
um, I don't want to disparage a holy book exactly. It's
Well,
not
yeah.
totally my cup of tea. I think it's interesting. The document has a lot of history. There's a lot of cool stuff in it. I like the intertextuality, the references to the Bible. In that sense, it's almost like reading a modern novel because it's all
Yeah.
these references and things. Um, I read about a half of it when I was in college, and then I was just kind of curious, and I picked up and tried to read from page one again to read the whole thing, and I only ended up getting like 50 pages through. But I don't know. I wouldn't rank them. Sometimes it seems like they should be all three
Mm.
put in the same book. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yes, because one thing, again, we're getting. This is actually interesting to me, though. But
Mhm.
we don't have to follow through on this if because I don't know how much you know
We
about
don't.
Islam. But it's
I know a bit. I don't know a huge amount, but
right.
I mean, I studied the Muslim world in college some.
Okay.
I read books by Arab writers. So I'm not totally ignorant.
No, no, I know you're not.
Hmm.
But sometimes people can get a little uncomfortable if you just bring in a new religion to the mix. But I definitely feel that being married to somebody who is I wouldn't say a practicing Muslim, but basically when you grow up in a Muslim country, you just, the prayers, the customs and the culture is kind of intertwined with Islam, which
Right.
is
Yeah.
actually a very nice thing to have because uh, somebody in my family and my extended family who can tell me about these customs, the nice parts of the religion, without necessarily like nobody has told me, for example, go and read the Quran to understand Islam. Whereas I think Christianity, maybe Judaism as well, it's a lot more focused on on that book, on the Bible, right? As being like the core, especially amongst evangelicals and so forth, right?
Right.
I think it's a little different in Islam, and the book was written 600 years past, right? Like
Right.
600 AD, so it is more modern
Mhm.
in a sense. But I can tell you, for example, I was trying to. So I've been just, I guess, casually reading Bible stories to my older son, and I remember when my father tried to do the same for me when I was, I think, 7 or 8. It just didn't work at all. I think I knew that he just did not fundamentally believe in any of this or didn't think it was even useful, but he tried because another family member basically gifted me the children's Bible.
Mhm.
So I tried to go about it in a different approach and just not force anything on him, but he seemed to really take to it and he wanted another one. So we bought another book of these stories, a much bigger one. He loved them. Um, and then my wife, who, bless her heart, was she's all supportive. They were in a multi faith household, but she did the same for an Islam, like a children's book of the Quran, and he didn't take to it. Uh, and I don't think it's a issue of like her not convincing him that this is important, but she said that, for example, because there's no imagery in the book,
Mhm.
right? It's all just text and stories and
Sure.
questions and stuff. It's less captivating. So as she said that, of course, he's probably going to be more culturally Christian rather than culturally Muslim. But we're still going through that right now. We'll see what he decides. But I guess I brought that up just because I thought that was an interesting test of like, okay, it's not just my imagination. There's something to the
I
Bible
mean,
that makes it
yeah,
more
I
engaging.
well, okay, so I don't want to go on and on about like the poetry in the Bible. Sometimes I think it's overstated because um especially when I was in school, and I had some classic study, some biblical study. I didn't have a lot of it in a church, but I had it in an academic environment. Um what was I going to say? I don't like I told you, you shouldn't go in and read it like a novel. And people sometimes misunderstand kind of how poetic a biblical text is. Although I really like the book Jonah and I compared it to a short story, it certainly doesn't read like a contemporary short story. Even just the way it's written, I think it's kind of boring.
Mm.
So it's there's a difference there. But I don't know. Retellings of stories are going to depend on the author of the retelling. So if you have a children's book, that might be also partially because of the author.
Yeah, it definitely could be, and there could be better children's
Hmm.
Qurans out there. But she did do her research. It just go on
Sure.
Amazon, look for children's Quran. There aren't many options,
Right.
and that's okay. That's okay. It's just
I think there might be some kind of religious parameters around kind of how you can
there are
repackage things.
exactly. All right, all right, and we're back.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah. So I guess I'm in the driver's seat for just a second. Tyler had just mentioned that he wanted to talk about cultural Christianity.
Mm.
And that's important for people who have read Dawkins and to watch his videos. It's also important for the people on the left, though, because of Zizek's Christian materialism. And I just want to bring that up. For me, the difference in the two is that Zizek seems to be an affirmation. It's kind of a positive act. He wants to promote Christianity. He just thinks it should be modified. I guess you'd call what he's talking about an Arianist, somebody who doesn't seem to believe in exactly the divinity of Jesus that we tend to associate with divinity.
Right.
And Dawkins is a scientist first and foremost. But let's open that up to Tyler.
Yeah. Well, basically, you're spot on, Mark. Dawkins is really where I heard that term because he did an interview. I forget it was last year, year before, a pretty viral one where the interviewer basically, I mean, he's known as a very famous atheist, right?
Mhm.
But he described himself.
Is that Alex O'Connor?
Could have been Alex O'Connor. Could have been, yeah, Piers Morgan or some other. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. We can find the clip.
That's not
But
important.
I know it's been. Yeah, I've seen clips of it everywhere, and especially on the Twitter sphere, which I really hate to go on. But I know when that clip came out, a lot of people said, "Ha, gotcha! You're actually a Christian." You know, like you want to believe in this stuff, even though you say you don't, right? Um, and I always found so I still like Dawkins, by the way. I should
Sure.
mention that my father is also a biologist or an anthropologist, whatever title you want to assign to Dawkins. So I'm not saying they're similar people at all, but I definitely connect with Dawkins' work as primarily coming from a biology point of view. Like he created the term meme.
Right.
Uh, I mean, I don't think a lot of young people know that Richard Dawkins literally created the word
Yeah,
meme.
I didn't until more recently.
Yeah,
I didn't learn yesterday, but it was long past the creation of memes on the internet and
right.
everything.
I think I forget. I mean, I think it's short for mimetic or something, and something that
Hmm.
genes can pass along and it goes viral, right? So I how that came to be the internet lingo version, I have no idea. But so Dawkins being a crusty old man right now, and I'm sure I don't know how young people like listen to him anymore, but he's still he's still relevant whether you know it or not.
Hmm. Well, I mean, talking of meme, I was just thinking, like, okay, so you said gene, for instance, in
Mm,
comparison. I know it means mimetic something, but this is not directly related to religion. But I have a video on William Burroughs, and Burroughs' big
yeah.
thing was language is like a virus.
Mm,
So it sounds almost like a meme would be like a discrete living thing living,
hmm.
in that language.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, his main focus is research. Literally, I mean, he is a biologist
Right.
and evolutionary biologist, and his main subject matter is genes and reproduction. And he kind of, I guess, it goes all the way back to Darwin, right? Like he's
Mhm.
fascinated by him, and my father as well. Um, and I think a lot of people don't know that like Dawkins is probably one of the most legit like actual practicing scientists, somebody who still publishes, somebody who, I don't think atheism really is what he wants to be known for. And if you see that
Right.
viral interview, he's really just trying to be like, no, I want to talk about this book about this completely, unreligious. It doesn't have anything to do with this, but everybody wants to bring his atheism into it. And so
I mean, he did become a political figure. He became a public
yeah,
intellectual. He kind of stepped in it himself.
I know, and that's I guess what new atheism was when
Hmm.
these guys started going on shows and having debates published. Right, I remember there was a, not to get sidetracked, but one of my favorite debates of all time is this one between Christopher Hitchens and Dinesh D'Souza.
Sure.
I don't know if you, yeah, familiar
I
with.
know Dinesh D'Souza.
Yeah, yeah,
He's been around for a lot longer than people realize. It's not just the contemporary political
yeah.
climate. I read a book called, I think it's called like "There Is No Freedom of Speech,"
Mm,
by a literary theorist and law professor named Stanley Fish.
okay.
And Stanley Fish was really famous in like the 90s for literary theory. He's not really famous anymore. He's pissed off a lot of people, and he's considered kind of unreliable. But he has in that book there's a published debate between him and D'Souza,
Yeah,
basically talking about patriotism and free speech.
sounds about right. Yeah,
Yeah.
D'Souza. Yeah, he has been around a long time. But anyway, I don't want to get into who he is,
Mhm.
but I know that debate, and Hitchens is long gone, of course. But that was one of the most entertaining things I think I've ever witnessed to this day. I still watch parts of it because
Mhm.
both of them are really good debaters, but they literally come from the complete opposite sides on
Right.
this. I don't know how well Dawkins and Hitchens got along. I know that they did some events together and etc. But like aside from that, they,
I think they were basically business partners.
yeah,
They got lumped together as kind of the four horsemen, and so your reputation is kind of in part dependent on the other horsemen.
right,
Daniel
right.
Dennett and Sam
Sam
Harris.
Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Sam Harris. I know he's
I've
controversial
never
these
been
days.
terribly into Sam Harris. I think there are some pretty serious criticisms to be made of him from a few different angles. I would consider him basically Islamophobic. Some of the things that he's
Right.
written are I wouldn't repeat, and I'm ashamed that people would say those things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I don't think I ever really followed him aside from I never really watched his debates. I know he has a podcast of his own
Hmm.
that goes viral every now and then, but I think yeah, for the wrong reasons, or at least he says stuff that's controversial.
Hmm.
I think with Dawkins, I don't think he's trying to come across when he says he's a cultural Christian. I'm not sure if he really realized that that was controversial because apparently that's a well known thing, right? It's not like a new thing that he just came up with. But for me, it was new, and I fell into that trap. I was like, what does that actually mean? It essentially just means that you
You
like the things,
participate in the practices culturally,
yeah,
but
like
I
Christmas, the
I
holidays, the
yeah, I've been reluctant to call myself that because I mean, for a long time, I would work most holidays.
okay,
When I was younger, I had crappy jobs, so I would be working on
yeah,
Easter or Christmas. I think I worked 2 Christmases ago or 3 Christmases ago. I don't remember. It was a different job, so
yeah,
but, I mean, I mentioned Zizek here because do you know who he is?
I've heard the name, but I
You've heard
haven't
the
read.
name, yeah.
uh,
There was an interview with Alex O'Connor that he did recently
Yeah, I
where
know him.
he says that he's a Christian materialist, I think is the phrase that he uses, or a Christian atheist.
Right.
And O'Connor basically asks him what the difference between himself and Dawkins is. And Zizek kind of putters out. He doesn't really have a good, succinct difference. If I'm basing what I know of Zizek, and he's been talking about Christian materialism for years as like a positive philosophic standpoint, I think the thing is that Zizek actually like actively believes in Christianity as a message as
Hmm.
well, whereas
Hmm.
Christopher Dawk or Richard Dawkins, not Christopher, excuse me, wouldn't be out there promoting Christianity. It's more just
Right.
like, oh yeah, I had Christmas with my children, and somebody prayed
Yeah.
before dinner, and I didn't want to be an asshole, so I prayed also. Um,
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah.
I think that's what he's going for. But I don't know. I don't know what you think about this, but the reason people were upset by his
Hmm.
statement was that Christians, I guess,
Hmm.
hardcore ones, believe that he's reaping the benefits of Christian society and Christian morals, right, and the teachings of Jesus, but then denying Jesus was, the Messiah and all of the things that come with actually being a Christian, right?
Hmm.
That's essentially it. If you don't believe Jesus rose from the dead, you're not really a Christian. So I think they think that he benefits from the fact that we are a Western, not necessarily Christian society, but
Right.
the ideas of Western society are
The
rooted in Christian
the
values.
need to pressure him because of that seems a little ridiculous. Like he's grown up in this society. If he wants to change a certain aspect of it or shine a light on a certain aspect of it, it's kind of within his right, you know?
I fully agree, but apparently the internet hordes don't believe it, or at least
Right.
the trolls out there. And
No, I
yeah,
guess what I'm saying is that it's to take umbrage with him for that sounds a little bit like what was I going to say? Richard Dawkins. Oh, what I was going to say is that the claim that Dawkins is benefiting from that system and somehow owes a tax, let's call it. He owes the tax of being positive when he refers to it. Sounds a bit like when people say that the Bible is necessary for morality. Although that is a salacious claim and it's going to grab attention, I don't think that in a lot of more philosophic circles that claim carries a whole lot of weight. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like getting mad at somebody
yeah,
because of the
I
clothes they're
follow.
wearing. It's like this is kind of
He and then he
yeah,
fully admitted that, which was the interesting thing. He grew up in this culture, so how is he not going to be influenced by it? And I I agree. I'm like, well,
right.
where's the controversy here? And maybe it's all fabricated. I don't know. I'm not trying to be cynical,
I
but
wouldn't be
I almost
surprised.
think that
Yeah, I
he
wouldn't
knows
be
what he's
surprised.
doing.
Number one, he wants
Yeah.
to generate some kind of buzz. Um, well, that's the main thing. I wouldn't be surprised if it was about the buzz.
I
Also,
I go
people
back and
people
forth,
pressuring
but
him
yeah,
might think that if they attack him enough, if he's willing to say he's a cultural Christian, maybe he'll take a step farther. And there are definitely
could
people who
be.
are very concerned about whether or not you believe the same thing as them.
Yeah, yeah. And personally, I want to connect this back to the
Oh, sure.
first half of the conversation again. Like I like I guess I like the way that Paul viewed what Christianity was. It was a more of a personal. I mean, I'm not saying that he didn't try to spread it everywhere, but you can you don't need to announce what you
Hmm.
are to other people. And I know that the core philosophy or like the tenets of Christianity are like forgiveness if you fall, and I guess being accepting. At least I believe Jesus was trying to tell people to accept the
Right.
poor and the starving and the meek and the meager, and that's great. That's good stuff. I don't think anyone should can disagree with that. Um, and I would like to imagine that a good Christian, if I say so, would accept Richard Dawkins when he says he's a cultural Christian and not take umbrage with that. And unfortunately, a lot of people, I just they
Right.
don't believe
No,
that.
it's
So
I don't know.
yeah.
I'm definitely blown away by some of the antics that I see online that are done in the name of Christianity. Um, did you see the monks walking across like 5 states in the South?
Yes, because I know they were going to end up in DC at some point, and it was
Yeah,
on the
because
local
they
news.
um they made a lot of people at certain churches very angry. And people were like, "This is not the way to peace. Jesus is the way to peace." It's like these monks are
Oh
just
wow.
marching, they're not doing anything. They're walking, and they
Yeah,
asked
no, they're
people to
not.
stop paying so
Yeah,
much attention to them. Like, they were like, "No, don't close down your city because of us. This is about peace. What that's a creation of a disturbance. That's not peace."
yeah. I can. Yeah, I knew that there was something going on with those monks. I saw them on the news, and I
Yeah.
tried not to like get too into it, but I can easily see that happening with if they just kind of show up in a
Yeah,
town and
but,
people
there
are
were
like,
people at churches,
"What?
like, big signs, like, "Jesus is the
Oh
way,"
man,
and it's like, "Dude, I don't think this is
yeah,
right." Like, this is, yeah.
no." They're not like spreading
No, they're not
Buddhism. They're not trying.
evangelizing.
They're
They're
not
not
going.
proselytizing anything. It's
Yeah, they're
it's
not doing
just,
any of that.
"Look, we're gonna march for
Yeah,
peace."
I know. I remember one thing about those monks that I, I found funny because, and this might not be funny, but there was this like horrific thunderstorm that was passing through right as they were
Mhm.
about to get to DC, and so they literally were trying to trudge through it, and it got so bad that like eventually they just had to call like some
Oh,
Ubers to
jeez.
like move them to under a shelter and like I don't know.
Mhm.
We'll have to look it up. I don't want to spread false claims, but I kind of I guess the vision of a bunch of monks in
Oh,
the back
yeah.
of like a Toyota Corolla just kind of heading to a hotel is just funny to me. Um, but
There's
anyway,
a there's a
no,
there's a
that was
YouTuber,
definitely a thing.
I don't need to spread YouTubers. I there are there's a
No,
religious
please.
YouTuber who's like a friar or something and wears like the old-timey robe, as part of a religious garment. He doesn't have like a tonsure, which is like a strange haircut. I don't know if they
Mm.
still do that in certain orders or not. I don't know enough about it. But, yeah, just imagining monks in robes, something out of like a Mike Myers film. Like you expect Austin Powers to be driving the car or something.
But no, I know, and I think isn't the trope at least in like crappy movies from 2000s like monks are
Oh,
secretly
yeah.
ripped and like they can balance on like one finger and like so they can actually fight. I'm like that's that's
A few
blending
different cultures
a
there,
couple of
yeah,
stereotypes. Yeah, there you go. But we don't really care in, over here in the West about that,
right.
especially not in Hollywood. All right. Well, I had fun.
Sure,
Is
yeah, so this is gonna be going on
there
my
anything else you'd
channel.
like to?
I don't have anything else to add,
Hmm.
we're gonna be putting it a few different places, and we might create a lasting podcast, but this is the first episode.
Yeah, we don't have an exact name, but I think you right now would just call it Chats with
Sure.
Tyler and Mark. And if our other friend
Yeah,
wants to
we
join,
have
then
another
he
friend
could
who
be a
might be
part of
joining
it.
us when we do this again. We're kicking around a few different ideas. Tyler has another idea, and I don't want to. I'm going to have to think of something to participate. So maybe in a couple weeks or a month, we'll have a second conversation. Does that work for you, Tyler? Say 2, 3 weeks.
That works for me. Yeah, we'll figure out our
Hmm.
cadence at some point and hopefully figure out the software but this was a good pilot episode, I think, and
I
Hopefully, it
think
just
this is going to
improves from
have a
here.
broader reach
Uh,
than my podcast, my YouTube channel typically does. I think that just listing books and your opinions of them probably doesn't interest as many people as a more general religious conversation.
I don't know.
Sure.
We'll let the people decide. And I I don't know much about YouTube fame, but your
Hmm.
channel is growing. So if you want to post it there, be my guest. I'm not a private individual. So hope and we will maybe create our own channel for this and broadcast it wherever. But as of this point,
Okay.
stick it on YouTube. And
All right.
all right,
Bye, everyone.
all right. Thanks, guys.